No one in the ballroom had ever witnessed a woman turn her back on the Duke of Ashford. Not once, not in 20 years of London seasons, not in a single drawing room between here and Edinburgh. Women fainted at the mention of his name. Mothers whispered prayers that their daughters might catch his eye. Lady Pemberton had reportedly wept for 3 days when he danced with her niece and then never called. The Duke of Ashford, tall, devastatingly handsome, heir to one of the oldest fortunes in England, was by universal agreement the most desirable man alive. And yet, on the night of the Viscount Hargrove's autumn ball, with the candlelight pouring gold across the marble floors and the string quartet playing something achingly beautiful, Miss Eliza Vane turned away from him mid-sentence, set down her glass, and walked to the other side of the room. The entire hall went silent. The Duke stood there, glass still raised, one dark brow arched, and for the first time in his 32 years on this earth, he did not know what to do next. But what no one in that glittering room understood was this: Eliza Vane had a reason, a devastating, life-altering secret reason, and if the Duke ever discovered what she knew about him, what she had known for 2 years, everything would unravel. The engagement, the fortune, the carefully constructed lie at the center of his family's legacy. Everything. Eliza had not always despised him. That was perhaps the cruelest part of the story. She had grown up in Wiltshire, the eldest daughter of a modest country solicitor, a man of intelligence and quiet dignity, who had served half the noble families in the south of England. Her childhood was filled not with ballrooms, but with books, not with suitors, but with her father's legal documents spread across the parlor evenings in winter. She was clever in a way that made titled men uncomfortable, and beautiful in a way that made their wives suspicious. She had come to London 2 years prior to serve as a companion to her ailing aunt, Lady Rothwell, a woman of connections, if not of wealth. It was through Lady Rothwell's drawing room that she had first heard the Duke's name spoken like a prayer, and it was through her father's private correspondence, discovered in a locked drawer after his sudden death, that she had learned the truth. The Duke of Ashford had ruined her father. Not through malice precisely, that she might have forgiven. It had been through indifference, the careless aristocratic indifference of a man who signed documents without reading them, who allowed his estate manager to pursue debts with merciless efficiency, who had never once considered that behind the numbers was a man with daughters and a mortgage and a heart that could break. Her father had died in debt, quietly, without scandal, and Eliza had come to London with nothing but her wits, her grief, and a copy of a letter bearing the Duke's personal seal, a letter she was not yet certain how to use. But before the Duke uncovered the truth inside that letter, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Duke's Lost Letters. Every subscription helps this channel continue bringing you unforgettable Regency romance stories, filled with secrets, heartbreak, and forbidden love. What Eliza had not anticipated was the man himself. She had constructed him carefully in her imagination, cold, arrogant, indifferent, a creature of marble and entitlement. What she had not prepared for was the way he laughed, low and genuine, when the Viscount's hound upset the punch bowl, or the way he crossed the room at Lady Hargrove's dinner to speak with the elderly deaf countess in the corner, the one everyone else had politely ignored. Or the way his eyes, dark, perceptive, oddly serious, had found hers across the ballroom that first night and held them for precisely 1 breath too long. She despised herself for noticing. He began pursuing her in the quiet, relentless way of a man unaccustomed to uncertainty. Not with flowers or flattery, he seemed to understand instinctively that those would not work on her, but with conversation, intelligent, challenging, occasionally infuriating conversation. He argued with her about Voltaire at the Pembrokes' dinner. He sent her a book of legal philosophy with a note that read only, "You will disagree with chapter 4, so do I." She did not write back, but she read every word. "You are determined to dislike me," he said one evening, catching her alone on the terrace at Almack's, the autumn wind pulling at the silk ribbons of her gown. It was not a question. "I am determined to be honest," she replied. "The two are not always distinct." He studied her in the torchlight for a long moment. "What have I done to earn this particular honesty, Miss Vane?" She said nothing, because the answer, "You destroyed my father," sat on her tongue like a burning coal, and she was not yet ready to speak it. Not here, not yet. It was Lady Rothwell who brought the situation to its crisis. Eliza's aunt, sharp-eyed and unwell, had spent weeks observing the Duke's attentions with growing alarm. One morning she summoned Eliza to her sitting room and placed a sealed letter on the table between them. It bore the Ashford crest. "He has written to me," Lady Rothwell said quietly. "He wishes to know if you would receive him, formally." A pause. "He intends to court you, Eliza, properly." The room seemed to tilt. Eliza stared at the letter as though it might bite her. "There is something you do not know," Lady Rothwell continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Something I have kept from you because I did not know how to say it. The debt your father owed to the Ashford estate, it was discharged 18 months ago, in full, paid anonymously through a London solicitor." She folded her hands. "I have reason to believe the Duke arranged it himself, quietly, without expectation of acknowledgement." The silence stretched between them like a held breath. "He knew?" Eliza whispered. "He discovered the circumstances of your father's death 6 months after it happened, through his own estate records." Lady Rothwell met her eyes. "He has carried it, child. Whether it is guilt or something else, I cannot say." Eliza went to him that same evening. She had not planned what she would say. She arrived at Ashford House in the rain, her cloak soaked through, her heart hammering behind her ribs in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. The butler admitted her with barely concealed astonishment. The Duke appeared in the doorway of his library, with a book still in his hand, and an expression she had never seen on his face before, something unguarded and raw. "Miss Vane," he said, "you are wet." "You paid my father's debt," she said. He set the book down slowly. "Yes." "Why?" The word cracked in the air between them. He crossed the room until he stood close enough that she could see the firelight reflected in his eyes, and the book-steady composure that London society so admired was nowhere to be found. "Because it was my fault," he said. "I did not read the agreements as I should have. I trusted men I ought not to have trusted, and a good man suffered for my negligence." His jaw tightened. "I cannot restore what was lost, but I could remove the debt. I thought it might give you some measure of peace." "You did it for me." It was not a question. "I did it long before I knew you," he said, "and I have thought of little else since the moment you turned your back on me in the middle of Hargrove's ballroom and made me feel for the first time in my life that I deserved to be walked away from." The fire crackled, the rain struck the windows, and Eliza Vane, who had come to London with a letter and a grief and a carefully guarded fury, felt something inside her crack open, like a sealed room finally touched by light. "You are," said she softly, "the most infuriating man in England." "I know," he said, "I have been told. And I do not despise you." The smile that crossed his face then was nothing like the polished charm she had seen in ballrooms. It was quieter than that, more fragile, more real. He reached out and took her hand. They married in the spring, in a small church in Wiltshire, the same county where her father had lived and worked and loved his daughters. There was no grand announcement in the society pages, no glittering reception at Ashford House, only a morning ceremony, pale sunlight through old windows, and a duke who held his bride's hand throughout the entire service as though he had no intention of ever letting go. On the altar, beside the register, Eliza placed a single sealed letter, the one bearing his crest, the one she had carried for 2 years like a stone in her pocket. She did not open it. She did not need to. Some letters, she had finally understood, are not meant to be weapons. Some are simply proof that the story began long before you realized it. He saw her set it down. He said nothing, but his fingers tightened around hers, and she knew, with the particular certainty of a woman who had learned to read silences, that he understood. If you enjoyed this story of love, pride, and the quiet grace of second chances, don't forget to subscribe to the Duke's Lost Letters and share this video with someone who loves unforgettable Regency romance. Until next time, some love stories begin with despising each other. The best ones always do.